In this video, we're gonna talk about Stinky Pete from Toy Story 2. He's often overlooked as a villain, but I think his character and backstory are actually really interesting and worth exploring. His story starts in the world of Woody's Roundup, which was a fictional TV show from the 1950s. It was pretty popular back in the day, and it had a group of beloved characters like Woody, Jessie, and Bullseye. But there was one character who never really got the love the others did: Stinky Pete. He played the role of the comic sidekick, but the thing is, his part never really caught the attention of the kids watching the show. While Woody, Jessie, and Bullseye became fan favorites, Stinky Pete stayed in the shadows. Because of this, he spent most of his life sitting on a dusty dime store shelf, all alone. As the years went by, he watched other toys get picked up and taken home to be loved by kids. One by one, all the toys found new homes, while he remained sealed in his box, gathering dust. Every day, he saw toys get played with and cherished, while he stayed on that shelf, completely ignored. All this rejection started to wear on him. It left a deep scar in his heart, making him feel bitter and resentful about being left behind. Things only got worse for him as the 1960s rolled in. A big cultural shift happened, and the focus of kids' attention changed. The launch of Sputnik and the rise of space exploration led to the popularity of futuristic space toys, like Buzz Lightyear. Cowboy-themed toys, like those from Woody's Roundup, suddenly became old-fashioned and were pushed aside. This shift made it even harder for Stinky Pete to have any hope of being sold. By this time, he wasn't just unpopular, he was forgotten. The show that had once made him part of the Woody's Roundup franchise was canceled. After spending decades alone, he was finally sold, but not to a child. Instead, he ended up in the hands of Al McWhiggin, a greedy toy collector who had no intention of opening his box. Al kept Pete in mint condition, treating him like a valuable object to be sold for profit, rather than as a toy meant to bring joy to a child. When Al decided to sell the entire Woody's Roundup collection to the Konishi Toy Museum in Tokyo, Stinky Pete saw this as his big chance. He figured that if kids didn't want him, at least he could be admired as a rare piece of nostalgia, displayed behind glass and preserved forever. To him, the museum seemed like a place where he could finally have some kind of purpose, even if it meant never being played with. When we first meet him in Toy Story 2, he comes across as a kind, wise, and grandfatherly figure. He comforts Jessie and Bullseye, empathizing with their fears and loneliness. He offers Woody guidance about his identity as a collector, making it seem like he truly cares about them. But like many villains, there's more to Pete than what he shows on the surface. Beneath his warm, comforting exterior lies a deeply embittered and manipulative personality, shaped by years of rejection and solitude. His bitterness from being ignored for so long turned him into someone who would do anything to get what he wanted, even if it meant using others. His true nature really starts to show when Woody decides he wants to return to Andy. Pete tries to convince Woody that eventually, kids outgrow their toys and stop caring about them. He even uses Jessie's heartbreaking story about being abandoned by her owner to make his point stronger, showing just how manipulative he can be. His argument is that the only way to avoid being forgotten and left behind is to live in the museum, where toys are admired and protected behind glass.
It's your choice, Woody. You can go back, or you can stay with us and last forever. You'll be adored by children for generations.
He manages to convince the entire group that life in the museum is the best option, claiming it's the only way to avoid pain and rejection. But when Woody changes his mind and decides he wants to return to Andy instead of spending his life in the museum, that's when Stinky Pete's true colors really come through.
I tried reasoning with you, Woody, but you keep forcing me to take extreme measures.
Wait a minute, you turned on the TV last night, not Jessie.
Look, we have an eternity to spend together in the museum. Let's not start off by pointing fingers, shall we?
You really are Stinky Pete, aren't you?
Prospector, this isn't fair.
Fair? I'll tell you what's not fair. Spending a lifetime on a dime store shelf watching every other toy be sold. Well, finally my waiting has paid off, and no hand-me-down cowboy doll is gonna mess it up for me now.
In the end, Pete's schemes are foiled when Woody and his friends defeat him. They manage to stop his plans and send him to a different fate. Instead of being placed in the museum, he ends up in the backpack of a little girl named Amy, who's excited to have a new toy to decorate.
Hi! You'll like Amy. She's an artist.